What's happening, guys, and welcome back to the channel. For today's video, we're going to be checking out the Transformers Legacy United Deluxe Class Animated Universe Bumblebee. And this is actually a great update because, first of all, not only is it easily recognizable as being inspired by the animated universe, but perhaps if you're not a huge fan of the super stylistic designs of some of those original animated characters, then just as a Bumblebee, I still think you're really going to like this guy, as much like we saw with both Dreadwing and Skyquake from Transformers Legacy Evolution, they have struck a fantastic blend between the old and the new. And to be fair, just as a regular Generations Bumblebee, I really do think this is one of the best that they've put out in quite some time. So as we check out the details, fantastic face sculpt. This most definitely is animated inspired, so accurate. I love the black panel lining that we have around the mouthpiece, and the windshield that does become the chest I think is great, although I'm not the biggest fan of the transparent plastic because unfortunately you can see quite a few of the transformation hinges and pins, and I think had they cast it out of a similar black that you can see for the thighs and the biceps, overall that would have been much better. But the rest of the design is awesome. I mean, check out the sculpt work that we have for the forearms. The legs are so nicely designed, and one thing that you'll notice about this guy is that he is much smaller when in comparison to some of the other Deluxes for Wave 1, but they've gone out of their way to make sure he is stacked. I mean, there are next to no hollow spaces on this guy at all, so he does have specific kneecap covers to help conceal a massive gap that you'll see when you begin articulating the knees. The feet have been fully detailed as well, and even as you flip this guy around here to the back, this has been just as nicely detailed as well as filled in as the front. So yeah, really solid looking Bumblebee. I love the detailing that we have here for the spinal piece, although I'm not too sure as to why the heels are not the front of the figure, because if you flip this guy back round, they have clearly detailed these to match the front part of the car. Surely it would have made more sense for them to have smacked these on ball joints and then reversed these around. I mean, I'm not too sure about the combos that went down in regards to designing this guy, but I do think maybe that would have been a slightly better look. But the design and the details of this guy is only one part about what makes him so cool, because the articulation for a Deluxe and a Bumblebee is fantastic. So first up, the head is on a ball joint, so this can look all the way up, which is excellent, especially when we pair him with some of these accessories in just a second. It can look down as well as rotate left to right. The shoulders are crazy, so due to transformation we get this hinge joint which can go up and down. They can also be brought forwards and backwards. They will hinge out to the sides. We then get this additional hinge joint which again can move forwards and backwards, bicep rotation and elbow bend, and despite the way the arms transform, we still get wrist articulation, which I wasn't expecting at all. The waist can rotate all the way around, and if you detach the windscreen away from its robot mode tab, check this out, you can actually use the transformation hinge joint to kind of get a fake ab crunch, and depending on where you rest the windshield, to be fair, I think it actually looks pretty natural, so that is a great unintentional ab crunch. The hips can kick forwards that far, as well as can go back to that far. They'll also go out to the sides. Full rotation here at the thigh, way past 90 here at the knee, and as I mentioned previously, these kneecaps are specifically designed so that, bang, you completely conceal that nasty gap, which I thought was a great touch. And then finally, in terms of the feet, these can rock forwards as well as backwards, and he does have a superb ankle pivot, although due to the way it's been designed, you kind of have to force it out of place, which I'm not the biggest fan of, but once you do deploy that bad boy, the poses that you can get this guy in, to be fair, are quite literally unstoppable. So overall, in terms of the first Legacy United figure that I'm checking out, I'm incredibly impressed, and it is so badass to see more Transformers animated designs be adapted for some of these generation figures. Now, as we check out Bee's accessories, in order to jump through the multiverse, we do get a pair of these super animated accurate looking thrusters. I really like the details on these. I mean, check out the sculpt, that looks pretty sick. And to be fair, the clear plastic they've been cast in actually doesn't look too bad either. But if you are after some proper animated firepower, then what you're going to want to do is come to either side of these panels, hinge them outwards, then take the fist and completely conceal this here inwards, which does reveal this huge port, which can be used to combine animated Bumblebee's Stinger Blaster, and this looks wicked. I mean, check out the blue plastic, the sick metallic silver overspray. This is a great accessory, one that I'm so glad they included, and it does actually combine 2007 movie Megatron style, which I thought was a pretty sweet touch. And if none of those looks do it for you, then you can split the Stinger right down the middle, pack it onto the blasters, and to be fair, they do create for some pretty cool blast effects. So I thought that was pretty sick. Bumblebee can finally now turbocharge himself through the multiverse into the Legacy universe. Now, as we check out a few comparisons, on the left-hand side we have Legacy Bumblebee compared to the right, which is the original Transformers animated Deluxe Bee. Now, the second you guys see this comparison, I'm sure you'll be shocked to see the differences in the scale, but you have to bear a few things in mind. So, first of all, there is roughly, give or take, I want to say around 15 years between the two releases. Deluxes and Transformers in general have all shrunk since the release of this original animated Bumblebee, and this Legacy Bee is indeed the standard for mini-bot scale that we've seen across the War for Cybertron line, Studio Series, and Transformers Legacy. So the only reason why this scale difference does appear to be so striking the second you first see it is because this Bee already is the smallest size Deluxe that has so far been released, when in fact this is the size that we have been seeing quite a lot over the past few years. But in terms of which one I prefer, I think it really comes down to personal preference, because of course the original version is way more animated accurate. This is directly inspired by how he appeared in the TV show, whereas the Legacy version is kind of a mashup between this design and how maybe it would have appeared had it been in G1. But what I will say is that in terms of enjoyability, specifically articulation, I definitely find the new version to be superior. I'm just putting it out there, this thing can pose like an absolute dream, whereas unfortunately, as you would expect for a figure which is coming up to be around 16 years old, this is definitely a little clunky in terms of design. But we are going to kind of spin that on its head when we check out the vehicle mode, so as I said, personal preference. Next up, here we have the Netflix Earthrise Bumblebee. So as you can see, they are roughly exactly the same in terms of size. They are average mini-bot scale. In terms of which Bumblebee is the best, personally, I think the Legacy version. The engineering specifically, I think, is way more better when in comparison here to the Earthrise version. And not to mention, I do believe that in terms of a figure which is non-exclusive, this is one of the first mainline Bumblebees, with the exception of Studio Series, that we've had in the Generations line for a very long time. So it's kind of crazy, because if you think about it, all of the Generation Bumblebee figures have been exclusives. This was an exclusive, Origin B was an exclusive, the one that come in the 4-pack was an exclusive, so finally awesome to see this guy make his comeback to the main line. Here we have the Core Class Bumblebee, the Transformers Rise of the Beast Bumblebee, which is average Deluxe scale, just so you can see the differences between the two. The Legacy Animated Universe Deluxe Class Prowl, and as a pair, these guys actually look great, and it's about to get even better with the upcoming release of the Animated Universe Optimus Prime. So far, these animated Legacy figures, I think, have been killing it, and alongside Armada are by far some of the best adaptations that we've seen for this lineup so far. Next up, we have the go-to Earthrise Optimus Prime. And then finally, for a blast from the past, we have the original animated Voyager Bulkhead and Optimus Prime. Now, as we get stuck into the transformation for Bumblebee, he's surprisingly pretty intricate for a smaller size Deluxe. So, the first step would be to flip here to the underside, take the heel spurs and snap these here into place. Do the same here for this side. We can then come up to the forearms, take these panels, hinge these outwards, and then take the hands, and these actually will flip inside. Now, this is why I thought it was so cool to see the integration of wrist articulation, because 9 times out of 10, when we see hands that are engineered like this, they tend to be static. So, I thought that was a pretty nice touch. Do the exact same here for this side, so flare this panel here out to the side, rotate this piece here in, and leave the forearms exactly like this for now. The next step would be to then come here to the shin guard, angle this section here outwards, take the kneecap cover, bring this piece here down, and then what you're going to want to do is take the foot itself, fold this piece here up, and then take this section and rotate this here all the way around just like this. The next step would be to then do the same here on this side, so open this piece here up, fold the kneecap in, take the foot, fold this section up, rotate this piece here all the way around, and then flip B around to the back. Now you're going to take these panels and snap these here into place and combine this section here right down the middle until it snaps into place. Then what we can do is take the waist and rotate this here all the way around. Now this is where the transformation can definitely be kind of fiddly. So you're going to want to detach the windshield away from the torso. So basically take the head and shift this all the way in just like that. We can then come back to that fake ab crunch, which I showcased previously, and begin folding this here in upon itself, as these clear tabs are going to find themselves tabbing into these slots. So snap that there into place. We can then spin around here to the back, take the rear bumper, extend this piece here up, and then fold this section here all the way down just like this. Now 9 times out of 10 this loves to detach, so if it does so, again, just give it a good old push. Now the next step can be really tricky, so you're going to want to take these shoulders and hinge these here backwards to reveal this black section. You're going going to want to make sure you do this, otherwise it's going to make things a little tricky in just a second. We can then rotate here at the bicep and line the side door up with this back part of the wheel, so it should look along the lines of this. Once you've done that, we can then use these hinge joints to just kind of shift this here inwards, and then this little tab will just slide underneath this panel. Now, unfortunately, nothing really tabs into place, which is my biggest issue with the transformation, which I'll get into in just a second, but come around here to this side, do the same, so rotate that around to expose this black piece, rotate here at the bicep, line the door up with the back part of the wheel, then we can just take these joints, shift these here backwards, and make sure that this tab here does slide on the underside, just like this. Make sure that you give everything a good old squeeze. And to finish things off, you're going to want to take this rear bumper and just snap it into the back part of the wheels like this. And bang! Here we have animated Bumblebee fully transformed into his vehicle mode. Now, despite the intricate transformation, I really can't say that I like this as much as I do the robot mode, because it really does just come across a little ugly. I mean, check out the side of the vehicle. The arms, as I said, don't really tab in anywhere, so it does result in quite a bit of gappage. I mean, check out that massive void that we have there. Not to mention we have this huge port, which I think looks kind of ugly. The front of the vehicle looks pretty decent though. I mean, check out the racing stripe, which is a direct throwback to Transformers Animated, as so is the little red light here at the top. Unfortunately, the entire rear of the vehicle is unpainted, which I think again looks kind of ugly. This is what B looks like on the underside. What I will say is that its biggest redeeming factor is that all four wheels are pinned on, and trust me, he rolls out the best that I've so far seen on one of these Legacy United Deluxes, so that is definitely a massive positive. And in its defense, if you do smack the rockets onto the side, I find it to make the vehicle look so much better, because it does kind of help to conceal some of those ugly gaps which I showcased just a second ago, and coupled with the Stinger Blaster as a blast effect, he really can turbocharge himself through the battlefield. So yeah, this is definitely my preferred look for the alt mode, and I would only recommend to display it in vehicle mode if you are going to attach these thrusters onto each side. Now, as we check out a few comparisons in vehicle mode, on the left-hand side we have Legacy Bumblebee compared to the right-hand side, which is the original 15-year-old animated Bumblebee. Now, whilst in robot mode, I found the articulation and the enjoyability factor to be a little better with this new Legacy B. I've got to be honest with you guys, in terms of vehicle mode, the old release hands down wins, and I also think is better engineered in terms of the way it transforms, because all of the panels actually clip together. I mean, check out the ugly gappage that we have here on the doors of the new Legacy Bumblebee. There's also a lot of breakups, whereas this one was super clean. And as I just mentioned, check out the paint detail that we have here on the original animated version. You know, had they slapped on a tiny bit of red to the rear of this, I really think it would have made it pop much nicer than as opposed to just the yellow plastic. So yeah, in vehicle mode, animated definitely is the winner in my opinion, whilst in robot mode, I am a little more conflicted in terms of the enjoyability versus accuracy debate. Next up, here he is alongside the Earthrise Volkswagen Bumblebee, just so you can see how these two pair. The Transformers Core Class Bumblebee, and we're not quite at the point where Deluxe figures are as small as Core Class, but to be fair, we're not quite far off. I really hope that this is the smallest that Deluxe figures are ever going to get, because if they were to go smaller, then I think Hasbro would most definitely be taking the mickey. As you can see, there really isn't too much in this, although in terms of robot mode, he was quite a bit bigger when in comparison to Core B. Here is how he sizes up alongside an average Rise of the Beast Deluxe figure, so where you have that series is Bumblebee. Here we have the animated universe Prowl, and so far these animated inspired figures have kind of been letting me down in terms of their vehicle modes. I mean, Prowl had a super ugly rear end, and the same can also be said here for Bumblebee, whilst their robot modes are actually pretty decent. So I am hoping that again that upcoming Optimus Prime is just a solid all-rounder, which judging by some of the promo images it definitely looks to be. Here is how he sizes up alongside the Earthrise Optimus Prime, and to be fair, I do think these make for quite a nice pairing, so they definitely have done a decent job in taking that animated design and updating it so that it does fit better in with some of these War for Cybertron / Legacy characters. And then finally, just for a quick blast from the past, here we have the original animated Voyager Bulkhead and Optimus Prime. Now, of course, none of these figures are intended to scale with one another, as there is 15 years between the two lines, but as you can see, the animated Deluxe B is dwarfed by these Voyagers, but to be fair, a tiny little sports car in comparison to this militaristic truck that Bulkhead was, I don't think this scale is actually too far off. And so, wrapping up on this review for the Transformers Legacy United Deluxe Class Bumblebee. Overall, it's a really solid entry. In terms of design, I still think it's very faithful to how B originally appeared in Transformers Animated, yet much like we've seen from some of the previous universe-inspired figures, they have updated him to fit in with the Generations line, and I really think this is one of their best yet. Love the robot mode design, the articulation is fantastic. As I said, hands down, this guy's biggest selling point, as he is just an absolute blast to mess around with. The transformation, I do think, is a little fiddly, and when you get him into vehicle mode, it's not terrible, but there are quite a few ugly gaps, and I have found that the door panels don't really like to stay tabbed in, which does result in quite a bit of gappage, and if you don't smack the turbo boosters onto either side, then the vehicle can kind of look unsightly, but it's sick to see him constructed pretty well. I mean, this guy really doesn't feel brittle despite having the entire chest unit comprised out of clear plastic, and in terms of all of the figures which have so far been shown off, I really do think he's one of the strongest in Wave 1. So I would love to get your thoughts on this Bumblebee down in the comment section below. What do you guys think? Do you think he is a faithful adaptation to how he appeared in Transformers Animated? And until my next review, I'll see you then. Transform and roll out!